Hello, everyone. Welcome into another episode of the Four Quarters podcast powered by Four Quarters Media. I'm your host, Tyler Bennett, here with you once again. This is part 2 of episode 6 in season 2, our regularly scheduled U Sports episode on Thursdays. In part number 1, which hopefully you listened to before this one, you would have heard from Cape Breton Capers men's basketball head coach Matt Skinn. And in this part 2, the reason why you've selected this one to listen to over the rest, you're going to hear from UNBC Timberwolves forward Emma vanBruinessen, EVB for short. Just a disclaimer off the top, I did mess up her name in the interview, so I apologize now. I apologize then too. I should have just said EVB. It's been a rough week. I also said Olds and Okotoks for an hour. Rough go these days. But in part 2 with Emma, we look at her transition to Canada West from the ACAC, having spent 3 years at Augustana before going to UNBC this year. Looked at her fourth year, first one with the Timberwolves, kind of how she found her role with the team, her transition from the ACAC to Canada West, the challenges that came with it, kind of what she learned in the ACAC to help ease her transition, if you will. We looked at the team's trip to Barcelona, Spain in August, how that kind of helped the team mesh together, and just kind of discussed the year as a whole. It didn't start out great for the Timberwolves. They went 3-9. They ended up rolling into playoffs on an 8-game winning streak. One of the hottest teams in the country. Double overtime playoff game against Lethbridge that pushed them into the quarterfinals, where they ultimately lost to the Dinos. We get into that as well. Looked at kind of what switch flipped for the Timberwolves that helped them go from a 3-9 team on the outside looking into the playoff picture to a team that finishes 11-9, one of the hottest teams in the country, and advances to the Canada West quarterfinals. So it was a really interesting chat to kind of hear not only about her transition from one league to the other, but kind of how she even got to that position. Was U Sports always a goal for her out of high school, or kind of what led her to UNBC in the first place? So without further ado, let's jump right in to part 2 of episode 6 of the Four Quarters podcast powered by Four Quarters Media with EVB of the UNBC Timberwolves. Enjoy. All right, so I'm now thrilled to be joined by UNBC Timberwolves forward Emma vanBruinessen. I messed it up. I told you I would do it. EVB. I'm going to go with from now on. How are things on your end right now?
They're going all right. I mean, best things can be with all the things that's going on worldwide with the pandemic. So, yeah.
It's been an adjustment for a lot of people, I think. What have you been doing just to try and keep busy, stay sane, try and get some sort of normalcy in your life?
Well, when classes ended in March, spent a lot of time in Prince George just figuring out what my plan was. Me and my roommate and fellow UNBC Timberwolf, Madison Landry, we made a lot of scrunchies. Keeping ourselves occupied, watching Bachelor in Paradise. But since then, I've moved back home to Leduc. I'm actually in Lacombe right now, living at my boyfriend's parents' house, doing some work for them because my summer job got canceled. So, yeah.
Seems to be the case for a lot of people. Summer jobs canceled. Did you guys sell your scrunchies, or do you just make them for yourself, and now you just have hordes of them for whenever you need them?
We just made them for ourselves. I think maybe she's been continuing making them, so maybe she'll sell them. I don't know.
Maybe she's onto something, a little side business to keep busy. Okay. Sell them to the teammates. Make money off them instead. See what you can do that way. 2019, 2020, in a nutshell for you guys. Your first season with the Timberwolves, making the jump from the ACAC, which we'll get to in a little bit. You guys finished 11-9. Didn't start out the best.
No.
As we're 3-9 on January 11th. And then, I don't know what happened. A switch was flicked, and you guys closed the year with 8 straight wins.
Yeah, basically, I mean, we came in after Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
obviously not where we wanted to be
Mm-hmm.
with our record. A lot of frustration, having losses we kind of expected to be wins.
Mm-hmm.
Also, then after Christmas kind of coming in, we basically we had a lot of injuries.
Okay.
I
Mm-hmm.
think that played into it. I mean, our
Yep.
first weekend back against Calgary, we had 2 girls tear their ACLs in Calgary.
Ooh,
Um,
that's not good.
yeah, so they at the time we didn't realize that they had torn them, but
Mm-hmm.
ended up finding out later that they were torn. And I mean, we kept up with Calgary for as long as we could. Calgary is a very solid team, and
Yep.
I mean, we did the best that we could. We saw them again later in the season,
Mm-hmm.
well, actually in postseason. But I think that was kind of like the biggest thing was having so many injuries later on. We had 2 girls ended up going out with concussions. Yeah, so we finished.
Jeez.
I mean, we had a 8-game win streak at the end there, but
Mm-hmm.
we also had only 8 players.
That when it rains, it pours,
Yeah,
and
100%.
2 go down, ACL, 2 concussion,
Yeah,
8 girls, and you still rattle off 8 straight wins.
yeah, I don't know how.
I don't even know. A lot of people probably would have just kind of given up mentally. I think when you
Yeah,
go in 8 girls and you're 3-9, and on paper you guys talented team,
yep, 100%.
and you rode that momentum into the playoffs.
Yep.
But what do you think it was that switched or flipped with the team when you guys started to rile up those wins, and you only had the 8 girls? What
I
do you
think
think? What do you think changed that momentum for you?
the one thing that definitely changed was practices definitely changed. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we weren't able to have real practices. We didn't have enough girls to scrimmage. We
That's
ended up
true.
having some of the boys' red shirts come in and help us out every once in a while
Okay.
so that we were able to walk through some stuff and whatnot. But Sergey did a really good job with
Mm-hmm.
practices, making sure that we were not overexerting ourselves. We had a lot of break days so that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, typically you end up at the end of the season. I mean, I experienced it in my first 3 years where you get to the end of the season and you're like dead tired by the end,
Mm-hmm.
and then you still have to go to playoffs and whatnot.
Yep.
And so Sergey did a really good job of making sure that like no one was overexerting themselves. If
Okay.
anyone was sick, they weren't attending practice.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that we didn't have less girls. I mean, if one person gets sick, everyone gets sick, right? So
That's true.
we were
That's
really trying
very
to prevent
true.
that. And then I think like the biggest thing is just the fact that like we were able to really gel together. We had 7 girls who played. I mean, our one point guard, Emily Holmes, averaged most weekends, she was averaging 40 minutes a game,
Mm-hmm.
which, I mean, we typically normally would have our other 2 point guards subbing her in and out whenever they could. But we had 4 of us who were averaging upwards of 70 minutes a weekend. And
Jeez.
so when something like that happens, you're tired and there could be frustrations, but you kind of start to gel with each other and learn how each person plays, where we can put people so that they're most comfortable scoring.
Mm-hmm.
Maria was starting to feel it at the end of the uh, second semester. First
Mm-hmm.
semester, she wasn't playing. She wasn't really in a groove, but by second semester, she definitely was in a groove. So we were able to use that. I mean, she's one of the top players in youth sports. She's graduating
Yeah.
now, but
Yeah. She led Canada West in scoring. Madison was third. I
yep.
mean, what was it like for you playing with 2 players of their caliber in your first U Sports year?
It's different,
Mm-hmm.
especially because I mean, coming from ACAC, there's good players, but the caliber is just definitely not the same.
Mm-hmm.
Madison does a really good job of putting people in the best scoring position possible. She takes to the rim, and she draws fouls. She gets the line quite a bit. I mean, she doesn't always get the calls that she wants, and
Yeah.
I mean, we're all like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just the biggest thing is like they see the court so well.
Mhm.
And I mean, I'm the same year as Maddie. We'll
Mhm.
both be graduating this year, but
Yep.
because of our experience and they had extra experience with the U sport, I was able to kind of gel with them
Mhm.
and be able to kind of step into my groove, find my own role. I
Mhm.
wasn't required to be a big scorer like I was at Augustana,
Mhm.
where at Augustana I had to be a big scorer, put up big points. At UNBC it was you put up 10 points, that's great. That's all we need you to do. Like
Mhm.
we need you to get rebounds. So I was able
Yep.
to really step into my own role
Mhm.
instead of having to kind of pull other things that maybe I weren't my specialty.
Mhm. You look at, you just mentioned your own role. You had 10 points. You ranked tied for fourth in the
Mm-hmm.
conference with 10.2 rebounds.
Yeah.
What was one of the questions that came in on Instagram? I'm just going to kind of work them in as we
Mm-hmm.
go. What was the biggest adjustment for you coming from the ACAC to the Canada West? You mentioned having to be a big time scorer at
Yeah.
Augustana, whereas now it was 10 points is it's what we need.
Mm-hmm.
We need rebounds. What
Yeah.
was the biggest adjustment for you to kind of find that role?
Probably the biggest adjustment is my size. I'm only 5'11", but
Okay.
I play the 5.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a very undersized big
Mm-hmm.
in U sport. ACAC it wasn't that way. I was able to push people around. I mean, I played against Moyen at Keano, and we were
Mm-hmm.
able to just like body each other back and forth. Whereas in U sport, you have to get a little bit sneakier when
Okay.
you're
Yeah.
looking for rebounds.
Mm-hmm.
And people, the bigs are bigger and stronger
Mm-hmm.
than they were in ACAC. So having to find ways where okay, I'm not going to be able to out jump these people.
Mm-hmm.
They're 6 foot, 6'2". Their arms are just longer than I am.
Yep.
So really focusing on like boxing out, getting in the best possible position, especially with the girls that I was playing with. I was able to kind of more easily predict where shots were going to go. I
Okay.
knew like if Maria's shooting, the ball is going to go here. If Maddie has the ball, she might attack or do the one dribble pull up.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in ACAC, I think there's a little bit less predictability.
Okay.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think um, I think in U Sport people find what they're comfortable with, or not necessarily comfortable with, but what they're really good at,
Mm-hmm.
and they use that to their advantage.
Yeah.
And it definitely made things easier on my part, having to rebound and get the ball.
Yeah. You find that there's a lot more. There are good players in the ACAC, but there's a lot more of those quote unquote good players in U Sports,
Yeah.
and those players know what they do well. They
Mm-hmm.
do it really well, and
Yeah.
that's what they focus on. They have
Exactly.
players that do different things really well. You don't need one or two people to do 3, 4, 5 things really
Right.
well. You have one player that's really good at rebounding, one player that's really good shooting the three, one that's
Mm-hmm.
your mid range driving.
Yeah.
I like where you went with that. Like it's more predictable. You know what players are going to do. They know what they do well, and you can kind of be shifty in a sense and position
Mm-hmm.
yourself for rebounds that are going to go this general direction, and give
Right.
yourself that leg up.
And they allow you to be successful as well. Like I think because of the high intensity of U Sport in comparison to ACAC, it's a lot faster of a game.
Mm-hmm.
So they're able to see things that not that their IQ is any better than ACAC. There's a lot of really smart ACAC basketball players, but it's
Mm-hmm.
just a little bit different. So they're able to find positions to get themselves into, to be able to find that little dish to you or whatever, to have the little put up or the little baseline jumper. And I mean, I was definitely able to get more comfortable with my little 15-footer
Mm-hmm.
shot. The last 3 years at Augustana, it was more like putbacks under the basket, which I mean, I still do it at the U Sport level,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot getting more comfortable finding where I can make those little jumpers and whatnot instead of just rebounding.
Mm-hmm. You look at, we mentioned before, down the stretch, you guys had 8 straight wins, rolled
Mm-hmm.
into the playoffs, probably one of the hottest teams in the country. Nobody probably wanted to see you in the playoffs, and you guys draw
Yeah.
Lethbridge, which
Yep.
had a familiar face for you
Yeah. Yes.
with Jess Henney. And then you
Yep.
also had Robin Fleckenstein, who went to Mount Royal. So you guys,
Yep.
Augustana kind of took over, invaded
Mm-hmm.
Canada West a little bit this year. What was it like for you facing off against Jess in the playoffs?
I mean, I showed up to the game, and I mean, we were doing our scout and whatnot, and I knew exactly. I know what she's like at practice. I know what she's like in games and whatnot. I mean, it's almost felt mean being like, I know what makes her tick. To like, here's how we can get her and whatnot. But we roll up to Lethbridge and we come into the gym and whatnot for the game, and she's got like a big smirk on her face, and I got a big smirk on my face, big hugs and whatnot. I mean, Jess and I lived together in my third year at Augustana, so we were roommates. We were decently close, and it's hard playing against an old teammate. I mean, I had a nice block on her, and I was like, still love you, Jess, but
you gotta hold that. You gotta hold that when you get it.
Yeah, exactly. And then with Robin and stuff, like, I mean, I kind of didn't anticipate her to go U Sport this year. I was kind of anticipating, okay, she's got all these recruits coming to Augustana, she'll go U Sport the year after. But then when opportunity came up for her to coach at Mount Royal, I was a little bit choked actually, because I was like, well, I would have loved to play for her still. But honestly, UNBC's been a really good fit for myself. I've got great teammates and coaching staff too, so wasn't that upset.
No, you have to know too that Jess is probably in her scout doing the exact same thing that you were doing. 100%.
Yeah.
And for you guys to come out, 8-point win, double overtime, so you had to sweat it a little bit.
And we didn't have barely any players.
And you had 8 girls, and I think Emily Holmes played like 48 minutes that game or something.
Yeah, I got fouled out like 2 minutes into the second overtime. So then the bench had even less people. And I was just sitting on there like, can this game just be over already?
It's the worst outcome you could have. Somebody foul out, and then when it's you, of all people, then you feel even worse because now you're down to 7 girls. 100%. The bench has 2 people who are just as gassed as everybody else.
Yeah.
Coaching staff probably just thinking it's another one of these hurdles that here it goes again.
Yeah.
And you guys come away with the 8-point win. And unfortunately, it ended in the quarterfinals against Alberta.
Yeah.
Just looking back at
we lost to Calgary.
Okay, it was online as Alberta, but then it said it was in Calgary. So Canada West,
no,
I don't get it. Yeah. Okay, I don't get it. But just looking back at the season overall for you, what stood out for you as probably one of the better memories that you have of your first year?
I mean, at the end of August, we got to actually go to Barcelona, Spain, for a preseason trip. We have one girl who's other than Maria, who's from Spain. She's actually from Barcelona, a little first year.
Okay.
And so we got to do some training there, and I mean, the first few days of the trip, I was pretty sick. I had jet lag pretty bad. It was really warm and whatnot, but that was a really cool bonding experience for us. I mean, I didn't know any of the girls coming in. I literally met Maddie 2 days before the trip because Maddie and I are roommates. So I met her, and then it was like, these are all your friends now, and you have to put up with them for 2 weeks. So that was kind of cool. And then honestly, just like the friendships that I've built, I've become close with a few people, and I wouldn't say that there's one like weekend or anything that this was a really great memory. I mean, when we went to Calgary for postseason, because flights were so last minute, a bunch of us, all of us girls who were playing, us 7 girls, we all got to sit first class, so that was pretty cool.
Ooh, okay.
Because it was the only seats that were left available, so
that's true.
That was a pretty cool experience.
Had you ever been to Spain before? Was that the first time you'd ever been?
That was my first time. I've never been to Europe before, so that was a pretty cool experience.
The first 2 or 3 days you're sick.
Yeah, it was not good. We had practice on the first day. We flew overnight, and we got there at like noon. And we had practice that evening, but it was so warm in Spain that we couldn't practice until like 9 o'clock at night. So we'd be having practices super late because there's no air conditioning in the gym, and it's like 30 plus during the day, and I got so sick at the beginning of practice, and I was like, oh no, no one's gonna like me, like whatever. But then it was like 3 days worth of just like illness, and
Oh God.
yeah, it was
And
the
then
worst.
the
But
time
then,
change
yeah,
and everything else.
yeah,
That'd be
yeah,
fun though. So you said you get to meet everybody, you get to
yeah,
form those relationships, and for you, living with Maddie, who you met 2 days before,
yeah,
kind of get to know her a bit, and
yeah,
she thinks now like this girl's sick, like what's going on, like what's wrong with her.
yeah,
But then it all worked out in the end. And
exactly.
my apologies for the mistake. It was Calgary. I don't know what I
Yeah,
read.
that's
Alberta.
okay.
Um, yeah, it's. I did one with two guys from Olds last week, and I said Olds was in Okotoks for an hour, and it's not.
Oh
It's an
my goodness.
Olds.
No,
So
it's not.
it's been a rough 3 months in quarantine. I will admit my mistakes, and I've had a lot this week. So we'll move on from that one. Um, Another question that came out about your transition from the ACAC to the Canada West. What are some things you learned in the ACAC that helped with the transition to Canada West? It could be about your own game, about anything.
That's a good question. I think probably the biggest thing that I learned is like being. I was always told coming out of high school, I was always told like I'm too little to be the 5 that I played in high school,
Right?
and um and I was like, well, no, I'm not. That's not a thing,
No.
whatnot. And
Mm-hmm.
then I got to ACAC, and I mean, there's a few big girls and whatnot, and it was a challenge, but I was able to kind of find my niche in rebounding. That's something that I've definitely pride myself in.
Mm-hmm.
I I look at stats at halftime and whatnot, and like see where I'm at, and okay, I need to bring that up and whatnot. And I think if I had just gone straight to U Sport, my game would definitely be very different. I
Mm-hmm.
was able to really focus on my rebounding in at ACAC and then bring that into U Sport. I mean, I'm a very aggressive player, and so it was really good to be able to bring that into U Sport, especially being undersized. I mean, if I just went to U Sport, like straight into U Sport, I might have been more of a outside player.
Mm-hmm.
But I really enjoyed the transition. And again, like if I had gone straight to UNBC, my experience would have been completely different playing under Vasiliki, who was a really great forward for UNBC. But I wouldn't have had the same opportunities in terms of like playing time and leadership
Mm-hmm.
capability. I definitely, although like I wasn't a captain ever at ACAC level,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely felt like I could use my skills on the court, leadership wise,
Mm-hmm.
um, be able to not really tell people where to go, but like
Tell people where to go.
where to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then I've been able to kind of bring that to U Sport. Like I have some experience and with like rookies and stuff too. Like I was a rookie at the U Sport level, but I wasn't a rookie by any means.
Mm-hmm.
I had experience, which I think was really good.
Was back in looking back to high school and you were coming out and going to post secondary, was it always a goal to go to U Sports?
Not really. I actually coming out of high school, I had offers to play both basketball and volleyball.
Okay.
Out of high school, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I had tried to make contact with McEwen. McEwen was kind of the school, my number one school of choice,
Mm-hmm.
academically. And if there was an opportunity to play basketball, there was an opportunity to play basketball.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really. I was always told I was too small
Okay.
to play the position that I played, so it was
Mm-hmm.
never like I was like, okay, well, if I can play college ball, I can play college ball.
Yeah.
And again, with having the opportunity to play volleyball as well, I was like, well, maybe I'll just play volleyball. I won't play basketball.
Yeah.
And then ultimately choosing basketball. And then when Robin came into Augustana, we had our first few meetings or whatever, and she basically was like, I think you actually have potential to be able to play U Sport. So that was kind of a cool experience. Like
Mm-hmm.
I never really thought that U Sport would ever be an option,
Mm-hmm.
just considering my size. So
Was
yeah,
she the first coach to really say there is potential for you to play at the next level?
yeah,
Yeah.
she was.
What
Yeah,
would you?
she actually she we were actually looking at me going out east,
Okay.
playing in Maritimes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She knows lots of coaches out there. I
Yep.
mean, she played out there and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And she thought that it would really fit my game. But then Mark, one of our assistant coaches at UNBC, I guess had contacted her in her first year saying like, hey, we want her to come
Okay.
play in what would have been my third year. And Robin basically told him she's not ready yet, which I wasn't.
That's true. That's fair. Yep.
And then being able to come in my fourth year. Yeah.
What would you say to people, like young girls or boys for that matter, who are in your shoes, who hear that they may be undersized or people put doubt in their minds that they can't play at the next level?
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give those kids to kind of push through that and be like, no, you can play at the next level?
I think just like figuring out how to use the size that you have
Mm-hmm.
in ways to be successful. So for myself, I mean, I'm an undersized big, but I was able to use that to my advantage to be able to out rebound people.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely worked on like strength training and all sorts of stuff like that in order to be able to move people around. I mean, people get told that all the time, being like point guards and stuff. That I mean, Steph Curry was told that for forever that he was
Mm-hmm.
too small, he'd never make it, and whatnot. And I think that if you just are able to find ways to be able to use the body that you have,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna be successful. It doesn't really matter what people think. I mean, if you're skilled enough, they're gonna take you.
Yeah. If you can play, you can
Mm-hmm.
play. And the only person that really knows what you can do is yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
And everything else is just background noise. You see it with the rankings, like recruits, like Steph Curry was like what, 2 stars maybe at high school, not
Yeah,
even. John
yeah,
Morant was no
mm-hmm.
stars, and
Yep,
look at him now.
yeah,
It's all background noise at the end of the day.
exactly,
And the only, like, if you can play, people will
mm-hmm.
find you.
Exactly.
And
And it doesn't hurt to like also. I mean, even if you're small. I mean, I did a lot of for both volleyball and basketball, I did a lot of the emailing coaches. I was
mm-hmm.
like, hey, this is something that I want to do. Like, you can't just wait for to be
Right.
discovered. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I ended up coming out of ACAC and whatnot. I was found, and that yeah, sometimes that happens. It is a rare opportunity, but I think
Mm-hmm.
like the biggest thing that people are kind of scared to email coaches, like, no, if you want to attend ID camps when you're 2 years younger, attend ID camps. Like
Yep.
that's how you're gonna get your name out there.
Seems like too many people are scared of rejection,
Yeah.
scared of not making it. The
Mm-hmm.
worst thing they can say when you contact them is no.
Yeah.
And you move
And
on.
then you
You
move on to the next.
go to another ID camp, you go to another tryout, you go to another open tryout.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing they can say is no, and it's
Yeah.
a 2-letter word that doesn't cause you any physical harm at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
You just put your name out there, and who knows what's going to happen. They could say yes. You could get yourself in a door that you never thought was open,
Exactly.
and before you know it, you're in the perfect situation.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to put yourself out there. But
Yeah.
that's the society nowadays. A lot of young kids that don't want to reach out to
Right.
people.
Yeah.
It's hide behind social media and hope that someone comes to you first.
Yep.
Sometimes
And
you gotta be first.
yep. Exactly.
Looking ahead to next year,
Mm-hmm.
which as of right now is
Canceled.
a half a year at
Yeah.
best.
Yep.
I've asked a lot of people this to get different opinions. What went through your mind when that news came out that
Mm-hmm.
it's suspended for the fall,
Yeah.
season won't start till at least January,
Yep.
as a fifth year? What went
Yeah.
through your mind?
I mean, I was a little bit frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously they have to make the best decision that works for them. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, I understand them making the decision when they did, as early as they did. I mean, it's frustrating to look at and be like, we could get to September and everything could be okay. We don't know the circumstances, but also there's so much planning that goes on behind the scenes. So it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely understandable that they made the decision that they did.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, as a fifth year, it's really frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've had a number of concussions and other injuries and whatnot, basketball
Mm-hmm.
related. Um, I'm getting old. I mean, I'm not that old, but I feel like I'm getting old.
Yeah.
My fifth year at university, and I mean, it's supposed to be the one that feels like it counts the most, I
Yep.
guess. Like
Yep.
it's your last run for it. I'm supposed to graduate this year, and so
Mm-hmm.
kind of like for myself trying to figure out, well, if season is canceled like entirely come
Mm-hmm.
October when they put out that decision,
Yep.
what am I going to do? What's that going to look like? I'm going to be done my degree. Do
Mm-hmm.
I come back for another year to play basketball? Is that is that part of my priorities? So I think for me as a planner, I plan everything.
Okay.
It makes
Mm-hmm.
things really difficult because
Yeah,
I can't plan that part of my life.
that's true.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's so far like ahead, like October 8th, I think it is when they make their winter decision.
yeah.
That's a lot. There's a lot of time between now and then that you can't really
Oh,
plan for.
yeah.
And you mentioned like being a fifth year player, that's your last go at it. You want to leave everything you
Yep.
have on the floor,
Yep.
and half of the years are even taken away out
Oh,
of something
100%.
you can't control.
Mhm.
Heaven
And for
forbid the
yeah.
second half gets taken away.
Yeah, and for myself, like with the outline that they put out with um like where we'd be playing, who we'd be playing, like
Hmm.
how if season does go
Hmm.
is a go, then like what season would look like. For
Hmm.
myself, I was a little bit frustrated when that came out at first too because I mean, I'm from Alberta.
Yep.
I was really hoping to have a few Alberta games so that
Yep.
family and friends can come out and watch.
Hmm.
And then I get told that I'm only going to be playing in BC.
Yep.
Um, which I mean is fine. I'd still get to play, which
Yeah.
is awesome. But it's a little bit. I mean, that's a little bit frustrating. And I mean, they're doing the best that they can with the circumstances, and I totally understand it. It just, I mean, for any fifth year,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're your first year, you still have
Yeah.
5 more years to play,
Hmm.
right? If you're coming in, your degree hasn't even started.
Yeah.
But for fifth year, it's definitely frustrating and
As
whatnot.
as a fifth year, I think you have the right to be a little bit selfish when it comes to
Yeah,
that
I think.
part of it because you want to play in front of your family and friends. You
Yeah.
want to be. You just want to have them there. It just makes
Mhm.
it that much more special. And now
Yeah.
you're stuck to your province of BC.
Yep.
It's not. Yeah. It's
Not
nowhere
ideal.
near the. No, not even close. And I'm sure family will find ways to make it there, especially
Oh,
for
100%.
senior night.
Yeah.
But playing in Alberta is a
Mhm.
lot easier to get to
Oh,
for
yeah.
family than playing in BC.
Yeah, my family lives in Leduc, so
Mm-hmm.
it's an hour from Edmonton, or
Yep.
not even an hour. It's like half an hour from Edmonton,
Mm-hmm.
and 2 or 3 hours from Calgary. Lethbridge isn't that far, so like
Yep.
it's nothing. Driving to Prince George is an 8 hour drive from my parents' house. So
And in the winter,
yep,
not the best conditions
no,
out west, to say the least.
yep,
And like having so many schools in Alberta within like that 3-4 hour
yep,
window that you could have played potentially.
yep,
You could have played against Robin
yep.
one
Oh
game.
yeah, yeah. We were
Would have
talking
been
about that.
fantastic. You could have played
Yep.
another game against Jess in the regular season.
Hmm.
Now, like all those little storylines too that you could have had that would have added to the senior year
Right.
experience
Yep. Don't happen.
out of taken away by things out of your control.
Yeah.
Like I don't think you could have scripted this
No.
pandemic and had people believe that this is what's going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
This,
And I feel for those fifth years that I mean, especially down in the States who their season got cut short, their fifth year ended
mm-hmm.
super abruptly.
Yep.
So I feel for those students coming into that situation where it's my fifth year and I'm already losing half of it. So I
Mm-hmm.
totally get where they're coming from. I mean, our fifth years lucked out. Our season ended before any of this debacle happened. So
Mm-hmm.
they were really blessed in that sense. But I mean, they didn't get to have a graduation this year.
Yeah.
It was all online. So
Yeah. There's a lot of things that you look at that you don't really consider until it's
mhm.
taken away. Then you take them for granted, and then all of a sudden, like within 48 hours,
Right.
the world shut down.
Yep. Yeah.
And all of a sudden there were no CCAA nationals, there were no graduations.
Mhm.
Everything just stores shut down.
Right.
Like it's crazy to look back at
Yeah.
3 months ago when everything was fine and dandy, and
Yeah.
then like
Exactly.
March 14th or whatever it was, 12th
Yeah.
maybe, just stopped and it's
Hmm.
gone.
Yeah. One moment you're making fun of the whole situation, and the next moment you're like, "Holy crap, we're in this."
We're actually in the situation and we can't get out. You
Yeah.
literally cannot leave your house.
Yeah.
If you
Exactly.
do, you get in trouble,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
A couple more questions came in online. Couple that I might get a chuckle out of. Who is your favorite UNBC teammate?
Well, that was
If
probably Maddie.
will not confirm or deny.
Okay.
You can say all
I
of them. That'd
shouldn't
be the
really
safe
say.
option.
I
Yeah,
shouldn't really say. They're all great,
there you go. Mm-hmm.
but my roommate Madison Landry is probably up there.
She's just an inch ahead of like one, and everybody else is like two
Yeah.
A, two B.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Exactly.
think that's the
Exactly.
safe way. I think you have to
Yeah.
probably pick the person you live with
Yeah.
because you live with them. If you
Yep.
don't pick them, they make your life
Yeah.
more challenging.
Yep.
That's
100%.
that's strategic. I like that.
Maybe
Okay.
increase my rent. I'm not really looking for my
Mhm.
rent to go up. So
You don't get any scrunchies anymore. She's
exactly.
can hold a lot of things over your head here.
Yeah.
Who is your favorite sibling and
My
why?
sibling. Oh my
I don't know how
goodness.
many siblings you have. It could be only one. I don't know.
There's there's four of us. I have
Okay.
two brothers and a sister.
Okay. Who is your
Uh,
favorite sibling and why?
I don't really have a favorite sibling. The dog, our
Oh,
dog Eddie.
ooh. Option D. I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah.
Okay.
Because he's always just so happy to see me whenever I come home.
The siblings probably aren't as happy.
Well, yeah,
They're just,
they they have to like me, right?
that's true. They do your
So
family. You kind of
yeah,
do. But they don't run. Nobody runs to the door like the dog does.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so dog. Option
Yeah,
D.
yeah, exactly.
I like it. The last one came in. It's. I think it's a bit of an unfair question,
Hmm.
given it's surrounding the team.
Okay.
And I'm going to preface it because every year is a different year.
Hmm.
Every year has different expectations. So I don't
Right.
know how this. I don't like the question. I'm going to ask it because it
Okay.
came in.
Okay.
Do you think you lived up to the defensive expectations set by Vasiliki a year earlier?
If I'm gonna be completely honest, I didn't pay a ton of attention to UNBC the year previously.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're very different players. She's much taller than I am. Much different threat on the court. Um, I came in and there definitely was this expectation that I was going to be filling some pretty big shoes.
Yep.
When I had when I had the discussion with Sergey and Mark about coming over, they basically like explained to me my role, that they were expecting me to start, and
Mm-hmm.
that I was gonna be the next Vasiliki.
Mm-hmm.
So I think because we're just very different players to begin with, I think that makes it a difficult question to answer. But I definitely think that the start of the season was not. I definitely was frustrated with myself with how I was playing. I wasn't putting up what I was hoping to put up. So there was especially like coming from ACAC,
Mm-hmm.
being like top 3 in rebounding and whatnot. There was kind of this goal that I had set to myself, that I wanted to be top 10 U Sport, and
Mm-hmm.
I ended up being top 4, which was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely it was a little bit intimidating coming in, because there was this expectation that this is what a big does,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what Vasiliki did.
Yep.
I think I definitely did my best. I can't really say if, I mean, coaching staff seemed to be pretty happy. Teammates seemed to be very happy with the role that I ended up playing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably the best that I can answer that.
I think it's tough too because, like you said, she's a different style of player than you are.
Mm-hmm.
For one,
Yeah.
you said she's taller,
Mm-hmm.
and just you're two different players
Right.
altogether. I don't it's tough to, you can't replace one person with
Yeah.
another person. It doesn't
Yeah.
happen.
Oh,
It's
100%.
by committee for one,
Yeah.
and you play to your strengths. You find your roles. You do
Mhm.
you. You're not trying to be the next Vasiliki or
Yeah.
whoever. You're trying to
Yeah.
be EVB. You're trying to be yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said, it took you a while to get going, but you closed the year with 6 straight and double figures in rebounds. So
Mhm. Yeah.
I'd say you did pretty well. You found your rhythm, you found your role,
Yeah.
and as long as you were happy, you met your
Mhm.
goal of top 10.
Right.
Coaches seemed happy,
Yeah.
players seemed happy.
Mhm.
See, I don't think it's a fair question to ask
Yeah.
because expectations year to year change, and
Yeah.
obviously there's going to be a standard for
Mhm.
defense. I think
Mhm.
I don't know if there's
Right. I would,
expectations, but there's a standard, and I
yeah.
think yeah.
I would say that like defense is definitely something that I pride myself in. Like I said earlier, I'm
Mhm.
not I especially at UNBC I didn't have to be Sergey told me a number of times that it's not my job to put up 30 points a game, that
Yep.
like we have other people to do that.
Mhm.
So like definitely defense is something that I enjoy. I especially being down low in the post and whatnot, like it's a constant battle between whoever you're guarding, and
Yeah.
so I definitely would say that defensively I put up a fight just as what I think Vasiliki would have put up.
Yeah. Last one for you.
Mhm.
It's from me, just on the spot.
Okay.
What's your favorite thing about UNBC away from basketball? Could be like in the community. Just what stands out to you about UNBC?
Um, Honestly, I would just say like the close knit of the community. I
Hmm.
mean, Prince George is not overly big. It's
Okay.
like 80,000 people.
Okay.
Um, but there's a lot of support. I mean, to relate it to basketball a little bit, there's a lot of support from the community in our athletics to begin with.
Hmm.
But also that being said, I mean, everyone knows everybody at the university and whatnot. And
Okay.
coming from Augustana, where like your class sizes were like I mean, I'm in political science, so it's not a huge field, and you have like 10 people in your class, and so
Okay.
everybody you can walk down the hallway and people know you, and
Yeah.
so that's one thing that I definitely really like about UNBC is just like the community
Hmm.
base of it. I mean, it's in a really pretty location. Um, the hill, getting up the hill is kind of a struggle when it's cold and there's moose on the road and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
um, that's probably my favorite thing about UNBC is just the community base that they have there.
It's always easy going down the hill.
Yeah.
Coming back up, it's you regret your decision to go down in the first place.
Yep.
I,
100%.
I don't know how big the hill is in Prince George, but
Well,
anytime you go down a hill
yeah,
and have to come back up walking, no,
yeah. Well, the
heaven forbid.
university sits on basically a hill,
Okay.
um, and you have to drive up and down. Like there's nothing around the university. It's like literally just the university is on top of
Oh,
this hill. So
okay.
you have to drive up and down,
Hmm.
and when the roads don't get plowed, it's
Jeez,
pretty interesting if you just have a little car.
that'd be tough,
Yeah.
especially trying to gain traction. If you have to stop once,
Yep.
try to get going again.
Yep.
Lived in Canmore for 2 years,
Okay.
working at a golf course, and that was just it on top of a hill.
Yep.
And I didn't have a car up there, so I'd walk into town. Think, yes, it's fun. This is a good idea. You
Yep.
had to walk back up the hill. It's the worst idea you could ever have.
Yeah. Fair.
It's never a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
But Emma, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to do this. It was a lot of fun to get some insight into your move from Augustana to UNBC,
Mm-hmm.
and wish you all the best. Hopefully, there is some sort of season for you
Hopefully.
this year. Fingers crossed for you
Yeah.
that you get one last run at it. And
Yeah.
anytime you want to do this again, by all means, happy to have you on.
Yeah. For sure. Thank you so much for having me.